Signs of Southland for October 29th, 2023. Gentlemen, uh, I have one question for you that came out of the Mini 500 this past Friday.
Oh boy.
Is the Invention Studio Mini 500 trike cheating or innovation? Mr. Purdy, you have your first up.
Cracks knuckles. I texted a friend of mine about this who wrote a long article about the Mini 5 for the alumni magazine. And we talked a lot about the Build a Trike team and about last year's Invention Studio team. So I could like educate her about everything. And she fell on the side of like, that was really innovative and very tech of them. Like, I don't see the problem with this. And then they did it again, where after Rec Club changed the rules, as we mentioned last week, where you have to have a 12-inch axle basically. They did that, except they turned the axle 90 degrees and just put a little nut of a wheel underneath the seat. So that effectively was two wheels again. But Rec Club's statement that they mentioned about this basically said they did everything right under the rules. They found a new way to do this. That was great, but this is a tricycle race, and we'll see if they do it again. And sure enough, they did it again. So I think we're just going to see this pattern this might be a fun battle with Invention Studio now. It's just like seeing like, all right, how do they reinvent the Mini 500 tricycle? If they can do it again, I think it becomes more of a like, okay, let's see how creative this can actually get if they're going to go with that route, and then let Build a Trike just be stupid fast all the time with the traditional format.
Mr. Grant, as a resident ME, I assume you have many opinions on this.
Actually, not too many. I think that it's kind of I don't know if the third wheel isn't touching the ground, seems to be a little bit against the spirit of a tricycle, but in terms of like actually going and putting something together, I think they're creative and I like creativity. It's the same reason why contraptions are my favorite part of Rec Parade if we're staying on the
Yeah.
homecoming trend. So I don't really necessarily fault them for it. I don't know. I'd rather see people invested enough that they're trying to do oddball out of the box type things like this. And, you make do, you, you make an adjustment to the rules at some point. That's just that's how it goes. I mean, not to take this too far away from homecoming, but isn't that the same conversation we're having about the tush push and the Eagles and
Right.
whatnot?
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
Well, you see, the tush push should be explicitly banned because Philadelphia does it, and anything that Philadelphia does should just be banned outright.
Should we explain what that is for somebody who might not know?
Yes, please.
So basically, there's a strong NFL discourse going on where it's seen in many circles as unfair against rules arbitrage, that Philly can just get some big burly boys and push the ball over to secure a first down. Is that an acceptable way of describing it?
Yeah,
Two sentences.
TLDR, they use what, basically two more offensive linemen behind Jalen Hurts to push him over
Yes.
the first down marker,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
completely legal, a little dangerous, but completely legal. And certain parties in the NFL are crying foul, which I guess is their want to do. But to get back on track here, to their credit, Invention Studio at least had a third wheel of some sort.
They did,
There was
and
another
it was touching
team.
it was touching the ground. Like it was the size of a quarter, but it was touching the ground. So it was a tricycle, heavy air quotes, but it was
It
in
was
but it was in
technically a tricycle.
it was in line with the other two wheels. So it was a
Yeah,
three-wheeled thing. It wasn't it
that's
was not
what
a
I meant.
tricycle.
It was not a functional wheel.
No, it was not. It was merely for
It was
show to
decorative.
be the loop around that technically was within the rules, that the new rules that were set.
But I mentioned that technicality to say there was another entrant that for all intents and purposes looked like it just had two wheels. And I could not figure out who it was. It
Oh,
was like
I may
a jet black trike. I'm going to use trike as a general term here, but a jet black
Oh
trike
yes, there was a second
that
one,
I
and
could not find where the third
there
wheel of
was
it was.
I saw that too. There was not a third wheel at all. That no way.
That
Yeah.
I wonder if they had it as removable, and they just pulled it off before they started the race.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were didn't have all the details about how last year's Invention Studio trike worked and thought that was two wheels technically or what, and not the two back wheels smashed together. Who knows? It didn't matter. They weren't good. They were not gonna beat
Anyway, they didn't
either.
finish the race and then smash their trike, so they're going to get banned for a year anyway.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It really does not matter. Gentlemen, shall we get on to the important business of the afternoon? We have Nishant, another fellow football writer here, to discuss a momentous 46-42 victory for Georgia Tech on homecoming night versus number 17 North Carolina. Nishant, how are you doing? How did you feel about this one?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys. I since I moved away about 8 years ago, I've tried to come back for at least one game a year, just to, catch up with people, keep up the streak of catching football games. I have now managed to have the opportunity to rush the field twice as an alum. So being this one and then the Florida State game in 2015. So I'm pretty pleased. This is the most chaotic Tech team I have ever seen. There are patterns forming. They don't make any sense in terms of whether they're going to win or lose or even play well on a given day. But, that game last night was everything I could have asked for. I wasn't expecting a lot out of the defense against Drake May. And, certainly the beginning of the game played into that, but I was very pleased with how the offense managed to actually find some energy in, 50% of the game at least.
I think it's one cool that you're able to come back. It's I don't know, not that I get numb to homecoming as a concept, but between us being Atlanta based, it's it's a little bit different. We're here every week. Well, every week that we're actually in town. Shoot, I forget where I was going with that, but is the homecoming game then one that you're like usually circling, or as an alum who lives further away, is it like, as long as I can get to one, I'm not gonna be choosy?
I don't usually circle out homecoming specifically.
Okay.
It has worked out that way a few times. Like it happened this year, it happened last year. Usually it's just something in October-ish because the nature of my job is such that September is our busiest month of the year. So it's kind of hard to come back then. But, that said, the previous year I came back for Dragon Con just for the heck of it. So I ended up catching the Northern Illinois game. That was significantly less fun.
Delightful.
Everyone had much fun at that game. We all learned how to actually say the name DeKalb that week, and so
for
it.
Wow. My own county.
Unbelievable.
I guess I was a DeKalb County resident for a little bit there, but oh well. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite concepts before we get into the actual football, and that's that correlation equals causation. Akshay, don't at me yet.
This is a flawless construct.
My ears are closed. I'm on mute.
I literally
my hands in my ears, going la 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 la.
For behind the scenes, in terms of how this, like the podcast gets made, Jack had to duck out a little bit early last week. So if you're like, where'd he go for the second half of the recording? Yeah, he wasn't there. And I was super pumped because I had all these fun homecoming trivia facts. And I kind of was walking around this week. I was like, Tech's 4-0 against UNC all time at homecoming time. So, that's a good stat. Not that it means anything. It literally means nothing in the context of 2023 Georgia Tech football, but it makes as much sense as anything that now Tech is 5-0 all time versus UNC on homecoming. Brent Key 2-0 on homecoming and 4-0 versus ranked ACC programs. So yeah, correlation. Good work.
I think absolutely. Yeah.
I want to also add here that this win makes Georgia Tech, I think it's 19-6 in the last 25 versus UNC, which considering UNC has had, will have two top 5 quarterback draft picks after this season in that time span is wild to me.
And 2 ranked wins too. Like that doesn't square. Like 2 of those ranked wins just were games
3 ranked wins in a row. It's 3 ranked wins
3 in a row. Yeah, 3 in a row. 2 for Brent, I got to find the tweet that I saw. Yeah, here it was. Yeah, Tech has 4 wins over AP ranked teams since Brant Key was named interim head coach. So this is about a year plus at this point. There are only 4 teams with more. They are the Alabama Crimson Tide, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the TCU Horned Frogs, and the Georgia Bulldogs.
I don't think,
And only 3 of them that we actually count as actual football teams.
It's just
I was gonna say, and just to before we get too far from the top draft pick quarterback class, that doesn't even count all the rest of the great players that have come through their quarterback. Maybe Sam Howell, 5th round type guy, or even the rest of the positions besides like it. UNC's
right.
Yeah, they put good
blue, but exactly.
They put good linemen into the pros, which is usually the strongest sign of a good program is when you're good in the trenches. So yeah, talent has never been an issue for them, which makes this even funnier.
It's hilarious. It's legitimate comedy that UNC was the only ACC team not to lose to Jeff Collins. Like it's just
not to beat Jeff Collins,
or not to beat Jeff Collins.
I think everyone else did plenty of the other one.
Many teams beat Jeff Collins. UNC was not one of them, but not taking again. It's just so ridiculous that Mac Brown's brain, and honestly, it's not even him. It's Gene Chiswick's brain just short circuits when it comes to playing Georgia Tech every year. And it does not make sense to me in any way, shape, or form. Some other stats, just to get a little bit deeper on that point. This was Georgia Tech put up the 2nd most yards in school history against a Power 5 opponent, 635 yards. That stat comes from Andy Demetra. Dante Smith had a career night, 178 all-purpose yards. 10 guys caught passes, and just to really send this one home, Haynes King was 23 for 30 for 287 yards, 4 touchdowns, for 0.62 EPA per dropback, which, if I'm not mistaken, is in the 95th percentile of all quarterback games from the last year. It is an absolutely appalling performance from a UNC defense that I was told at one point was getting its stuff together.
I do want to correct an erratum before we get too far down. Jeff Collins was 1-1 against UNC. UNC did win in 2019. That was a home game as well.
Very few teams that have a 500 or worse record against Jeff Collins.
In any case, they lost to Jeff Collins. That is the bar of competence that I expect.
Yes.
I think.
Anyways,
my moment yesterday was, I think it was sometime in the 3rd quarter as this was all playing out. I just paused and was like, Gene isn't still their defensive coordinator, is he? And lo and behold, I think this is his 2nd stint there, if I remember correctly. And
I think he was there before Auburn, right?
Before
he got hired to where he was
couldn't tell you.
Auburn from.
Yeah.
He was Auburn's guy in that Cam Newton season. And then Auburn went like 3-8 the next season once everybody got drafted and left. And then he left for North Carolina after that. So that was like 2011, 2012 when he first got there.
Yeah, I think he was fired after Auburn. He was fired after the 2012 season at Auburn. He got 2 years after Cam. So it would have been 13 when he went to UNC, which, hey, guess what UNC did against Tech that year? They had a big lead and they collapsed and lost.
Shoot, what was I going to say? And so the weird thing is, and I'm sure this is something that's, something we'd circle back on regardless, but the 1st and the 3rd quarters, I mean, the defense, Gene Chiswick's play, like all that was working really well. Off the top of my head, my box scores on the other screen, it's 10 yards that Tech amassed in the 3rd quarter, right? Like,
right, yeah.
I was literally standing in the stands and I was like, wow, we went from such an exciting 2nd quarter to such a dull 3rd quarter. I wonder what will happen in the 4th.
1st quarter, we had the ball for 9.5 minutes, couldn't score. North Carolina was up 14-0 at that point. We had 88 yards in that quarter, I want to say. 2nd quarter, we go off the walls. Excuse me while I start the pages. 3rd quarter, we have the ball for 1:44 and get 10 yards. Then the fourth quarter happens.
I couldn't even be mad that the defense was struggling the way they were in the third because they were on the field the entire time.
Right. Yeah. Like that was, once I noticed, like, wait a second, this time possession in this quarter is just terrible for us. That was around when, like, in these games where we've been in it and lost inexplicably, where things really started to backslide. And that fourth quarter, they scored in that fourth quarter when they absolutely had to. I think that was when we got the big Dante Smith run and a couple of those other massive chunk plays that set us up. Which was insane. I want to go back to the first quarter because, I mean, as you mentioned, Nishant, about like, oh, we were kind of expecting them to run through us because we are of the worst FBS run defenses ever, and it worked that way. Their first two drives, they had run plays. This was mostly O'Marion Hampton. They had run plays of 10, 14, 6, 9, 8, 7, 9, 5, and 17 in the first two drives. They were just basically just handing the ball to him and letting him find any gap, any of the three gaps he could pick from. It mostly just would go to the A gap because the A gap was wide open all of the time. And it got better over the game. Like, it actually got, like, they kind of defaulted on that, I think, a little too hard in that fourth quarter when bleeding clock made sense. Like, you're up 2 scores, bleed clock best you can. But they got super, super predictable. Like, they weren't running even counter plays. They couldn't even run a jet sweep. Like, I figured at least one jet sweep in there. No, not even that. Haynes made a point in the press conference where, because they were really doing a lot of screenplays, and they were intentionally trying to get North Carolina to run side to side a lot and get both axes in play to make it harder to predict. And North Carolina was not doing that much. Like, that could thrash us easily if you can have us guessing on a lot of things. And they did exploit us a number of times where we weren't set and stuff like that. But it seems like in the end, Haynes just had a better sense of what to do against the defense than Drake did.
I actually want to touch on that from the Georgia Tech perspective as well. Those 2 drives that, I guess it was more than 2 drives, but when Tech was down 14-0 and had the ball for, I think you said, what, nine minutes, right?
9.5 minutes, yeah.
9.5 minutes in the first quarter. That first drive ends in a punt. That second drive ends in a 4th and 2 from the minus 46. Jamal Haynes runs for no gain.
Yeah.
I'll come back to if that was a good decision or not. I have to actually pull it up. And then the next Tech drive after that, at which point UNC is up 14-0, is another 4th and go from Tech, but this time at the plus 32. Offhand, I think that when you're down 7 and going for it on your own 42, I think I'm fine with that one. I think I'm even more fine with the 4th and 3 at the plus 32. I think that's one where you definitely have to go, and you're basically giving them effectively a touchback.
Right. Yeah. It's basically, it's a punt plus a few yards. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think for the other one, for the first one, the one that was a 4th and 2 at the 46, the bot has that as a toss up between a punt and a go. I'm pulling up the one at the UNC 32 now. That one is also surprisingly a toss up. Curious.
We've done, like, we've been like that our first drive was okay. There wasn't that much there. That we got basically almost 3 and out of. But that second drive when we were down 14-0, like, we had made some progress. Like, we started on our own 25 on that one. We had a 10-yard run. We had Dante Smith was finally getting into the game and stuff like that. So it wasn't like, it felt like we definitely could have. And I don't remember that pass. You all remember if that pass to Rutherford was like catchable or was that on Haynes? I'm forgetting what the deal was there. Either way, they had a billion plays to get 3 yards. Like, in hindsight, they should have gotten that. They probably could have gotten on the ground if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at 4th and 3 on the plus 32, it's like you have most of your playbook open to you at that distance.
Right. Yeah.
Both because you have the vertical space and you have a short yards to gain. It's still one play, but there's so many options, especially when you're able to get push on this drive in the run game, which I think you mentioned. Haynes King runs for 10 yards. Jamal Haynes gets 1, so you can toss that one out. But Dante Smith gets 4. Dante Smith gets 11. Jamal Haynes gets 4. So you've been able to get chunk plays off. There is definitely a call of the playbook where you could have gotten 3 on the ground, but at the same time, Haynes was able to get to Haynes King was able to get to Malik Rutherford for 10 on this drive. He's able to get to Malik Rutherford for 3, right? He's able to make those intermediate passes that gives you confidence that you can go either run or pass in this situation, and it just ends up not working out, which I mean, I think it's still good process to get to that point where you're saying, okay, we're 4th and 3 at the 32. We are going for it. We're trying to win on the margins there.
Right. Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that I got that.
That was good. Let's make sure we note about Dante. Like, of course, this was the game Paul Johnson got his Hall of Fame introductory thing. His name's now permanently affixed on the interior of the stadium next to Calvin Johnson's name on the row of College Football Hall of Famers. They'll have the plaque for that permanently affixed here at Bobby Dodd somewhere, probably in the Edge building or whatever that building becomes when that gets redone. But it was notable that he was a Dante, he recruited Dante Smith, and he's here for he came for the extra year, and and Dante's been missing. It hasn't been an injury thing. Keeb clarified in the press conference that it wasn't a disciplinary thing either. It just, he just made it seem like it was just time for that card to get used, basically, is how he framed it. And also a gazillion rushing yards in front of Paul. All of this happening in front of Paul is so cathartic of what, from the first play in that spring game with Collins where they check out of the triple option and throw a ball over the middle. It's okay, we're doing this now. And even with King, who is on track to have one of the better Tech passing seasons ever, it's still just incredible that we got to merge all of these moments into one game and kind of wrap up the storylines. Poor Dante's parents, they wanted to find Paul after the game, but because the field got stormed, they couldn't find Paul afterwards. And I'm sure Paul did not need to be inside that mass of human beings. But
hold on, he absolutely should have been, because then we could have gotten another classic Paul Johnson wags his tongue to the camera GIF moment.
Something like that,
which is truly the greatest gift that FSU game gave us. Yeah. I finished the thought on Dante too, just to give his stat line: 22 carries, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 0.42 EPA per play. So that just to contextualize how good of a game he was actually having. Jay, go ahead.
I was going to say I have one more Paul note that I want to get out there. I know when they put Calvin Johnson into the hall, they kind of unveiled a banner on the side of the stadium. Obviously, we have all the coaches and players listed out there. I think that would also probably at some point be something to look for in terms of recognition. I have no idea when that would be. I know they just redid those banners a couple of years ago, but that would be the other thing that I would at least keep an eye out for to getting his recognition out there. And on Dante, all flowers to him. He had the performance I think that we've kind of hoped that would come along this year with how long he's been a really great contributor on this team.
There was one specific drive. I don't think it was the one that let Tech take the lead. I think it was the one before that where essentially they just were like, hand to Dante, hand to Dante, hand to Dante. Stop it if you can, UNC. And they didn't. They got him all the way down the field. And it took me back, honestly, to one very old memory because my freshman year was Paul's first year. And I remember one game against Virginia where they ran rocket toss to Roddy Jones on the first play and got 20 yards. They ran rocket toss to Roddy Jones again, got another first down. They ran it again, got another first down. And it was that drive where they just handed Dante Rapili was so vintage Paul Johnson, just we're running the same thing until you stop it.
Right. Yeah.
Just stop it. And then you'll get something.
It really was. So when we're on the drive,
it's immediately after the missed field goal for UNC because I see it.
There's that one.
I see it in the feed here.
2 drives before,
and then they also did it before that too.
Yeah, 2 drives before that. He runs the ball 4 times in a row. 5 yards, 7 yards, 9 yards, 6 yards, then a 14-yard pass to Christian Leary, and then they do the same thing with Jamal Haynes, 29-yard run, 6-yard run, 8-yard run, 4-yard run, touchdown. The drive you're referring to, Nishant, which is the one that got us up to 46, 42, the Haynes kick 52-yard run, Dante for 10, Dante for 14, and then Dante for 2, and then for -4 before he gets to the goal line on that 14-yard run. Basically, we're at 4th and extremely short. And if we got maybe a little too predictable there on that next play when you're at 4th and short, and that's been happening. But then Brett Seether got that toe down, that left toe down. I don't know if y'all saw on the replay, but he catches the ball and his left foot is just leaving, and he just barely toe taps it like about 3 inches from the sideline. His right foot was going out the whole way. And I asked him in the presser, I'm like, did you know you had that left foot down? He's like, yeah, I thought I had it down. He just didn't know if he had gotten pushed out before, like right before, as he was dragging that foot. But he knew that foot was coming down at the right moment. So incredible. And Brett had 2 touchdowns too. This game does not happen without a very nice long Brett Seether touchdown for like 35-ish something yards like that. And then this one. There was a lot of touchdowns in this game, y'all. There was a lot of touchdowns.
I was going to say that's kind of a beautiful thing. We get to say, "Oh yeah, that touchdown, this touchdown, that touchdown." Yeah. You know the one, and then that's a crazy thing. Like you're going to say, "Oh, that Brett Seether touchdown." You know, in 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years when you talk about this game,
yep.
And the proper answer to that is going to be which one. I mean, it was that's what happens when.
Yes,
I think I've been sitting on this take too. One thing that I think we kept circling around, even in the Miami game, which was a good win. You know, we don't have to relitigate that, but it feels like the first, I guess, complete game. We've like obviously giving up 42 points and all those yards is a lot of yards. Letting Drake May get 11.5 points or yards per play is a lot of yards.
Right.
But I think this is as close to a complete game, I feel like, that we've seen from Tech. I mean, there are a couple big stops, not the most sacks in the world, but certainly against the highest level of competition we've seen. And it's going to take that. And you know, I think Akshay, your phrasing might have been the dreaded proof of concept, but it wasn't a perfect game. But between the offense and the defense, there were certainly more moments distributed between both sides of the ball, I think, than we've seen in a couple of the other key Tech games this year.
Yeah, it felt like if we were going to win this game, relying on the defense was not a thing to hope for. So you kind of had to think it was going to be a shootout at that point.
They played some Big 12 football.
That's what happened, and we had the 3 stops we needed to make at 2 or 3 stops we had to make at the end. And granted, also North Carolina got some terrible penalties that they did not need to be committing at all. We had a couple on our own, of course, but they had some not good ones at the end there. So
I remember the penalty yardage was pretty significant. I think it was Carolina had 8 for 65. We had like 3 for 19 or something.
Yeah, and that's something that I actually wanted to come back to from that advanced stats perspective too. So from a team, or in terms of team EPA, like total, all factors, all facets of the game included, UNC got doubled up on EPA. And it was not like Drake May making mistakes and costing his team EPA in like actual scrimmage plays. It was, they missed a field goal. They had a couple of they had some issues on punting. I think there were a couple of inefficiencies there.
They had the one block,
and then the one block, and then they had almost a touchdown's worth of EPA lost in terms of penalties. I mean, it's 5.446 to take it for what you will, but but when you put all that together, they had an offensive EPA of 23.5, and that gets bumped back down to 16 when you look at it all considered, and Tech had 33, or just about 34 total. So it's just a lot of indiscipline from an offensive line. They get caught holding a bunch of times. I mean, if you called holding on every play, we'd never actually play a football game ever. But still, it is like a lot of just mental mistakes. I mean, I think the field goal that they missed was from 40 yards out. 40, college kickers are generally not terrible from 40.
It wasn't the actual kick itself was like straight and plenty powerful. He just aimed it wrong. Like
He started on the left hash and he missed left, but it looked good off the foot. It just curved.
Yeah, I mean, just to contextualize that numerically, though, you can estimate, like you can do expected points for field goals based on the probability that someone will make it from a specific distance. So I don't have the calculator out to work backwards from this, but it was a 39-yard field goal. The expected points for that were 2.9, right, out of 3 possible points. So you left 2.9 expect EPA on the table.
Yeah, that's
effectively. Yeah, it was like gimme, and you just missed, and that, I think that kind of thing is what really got UNC in trouble between missing that field goal and then all of the penalties that they added up. It's just they definitely had opportunities to put this game away, and they just kept Tech hanging around.
Yeah,
and
you're hitting on a thing here because I was about to mention our EPA without explosive plays being -8. We had 1 in 5 of our passing plays were explosive passing plays, which fantastic. Out credit to Jeep Wade and Buster Faulkner for planning that well and being being 10 receivers got balls
and for those receivers getting open in situations that matter, right? Like that's part of expected points. The context of where you're making these plays, the yard line, the down, the distance, like that all gets incorporated into the model. And it's not just these guys, like not just the scheme, the play that you call, but also being able to execute in those moments.
Right.
And it's, you can just see it in the passing performance, right? Like I said, 23 for 30, 287, 4 touchdowns, 62 EPA per play is not just a Haynes King thing, right? We don't have the ability in college to separate out the air yards, just the passing, like the literal passing yards from the yards after the catch. But so that whole performance, that 60.62 EPA per dropback performance, that's a testament to that entire passing offense. Not just kidding. Not to take credit away from him, but to contextualize that as saying like this was a very well called game and people made plays when it mattered to maximize that number.
The team effort was a team effort indeed. But yeah, I noticed this after the Wake Forest game, which kind of explained to me what happened with Boston College, that like we won that game with a lesser success rate than Wake Forest. We only had 5 more plays with a successful EPA than North Carolina in this game, but I mean, a shootout's a shootout. So like it's on the surface looks fantastic, feels as good as anything has felt in terms of our football program in a long time. But at the same time, it's like it's not all the way all there yet. We still got a ways to go here. We got a bad North Carolina day. They've had 2 straight bad days, and thank goodness we took advantage of it because I definitely thought that Boston College game was the make or break point of the season because I had written this game completely off. I thought we were going to lose by 28. And now Virginia, who knows what happens next week in Charlottesville, truly have no idea what the hell to expect about that game. And then Clemson, who they might be tanking for draft picks that don't exist.
Extremely fraudulent Clemson team. Extremely fraudulent.
Syracuse is Syracuse again. So
can I read the ACC standings real quick?
Yes. Oh, yes. Do that. Yeah.
Okay. Florida State, number 1, 6-0. Louisville, 4-1. Virginia Tech, 3-1. Those teams play next week, by the way. Also, after that, Georgia Tech at 3-2. Keep in mind, if not Louisville margin we had held out, Tech would currently be second in the ACC. Gives you some perspective on just how things have gone this year for the conference as a whole.
Dumbest conference in the world, baby.
UNC's in 5th, 3-2. Miami's 2-2, as well as Boston College and Duke and NC State, who beat Clemson yesterday. Clemson's 2-4. They've actually played 6 conference games already, which feels like a lot, but Florida State's done that, so go figure. Pittsburgh's 1-3, Virginia's 1-3, Wake Forest is 1-4, and Syracuse is 0-4. So, quite an interesting slate. But if the season ends today, it's Louisville versus Florida State in Charlotte. So go figure.
Jake, you indirectly hit on probably the funniest point of all right there. It is the end of October in 2023, and Virginia Tech controls its own destiny.
Yes, they do. And they lost to Rutgers and Marshall this year, I believe.
Yes, they lost to Marshall. This
is the ACC I know and love.
See, what happens is they allowed Coastal Chaos to infect the entire conference when they disbanded the divisions and went single table, and now everyone does it instead of it just being confined to one little box. It broke contain. It's gonna go to the West Coast next. It's gonna be a whole thing.
Yeah.
By Coastal Chaos.
Love it. Love it.
It's going to be
If you break open the coastal and let it seep out, it takes over.
It's a can of worms that you've now slathered across the entire Atlantic coast.
It is the virus of college football. It will not stop expanding.
Well, college football itself can't stop itself from expanding, but that's a different, entirely side point. Mr. Grant, I want to come to you because I think something that we've talked about in the past, especially with regards to the national narrative around Georgia Tech and the Collins area, was this idea of a proof of concept, effectively a kind of a proof of life and a sign that that program is going in the right direction, doing the things that it needs to do in order to be successful. Maybe not in this year, but maybe in the next year. Given Georgia Tech's state after this game, they are, you said, 3-2 in the ACC and 4-4 overall. What is your ruling so far in terms of proof of concept on the key era?
This game, and as many football games do, came down to a few key plays. And if those go different, we're talking about this game differently. If you would have asked me last week if we had seen any proof of concept, I probably would have not been too high on that opinion, if that's a fair way to put that. That said, I think I stand by what I said a little bit earlier, that this isn't the most perfect game I think we've seen, but certainly the most convincing, i.e. on a day when the defense is down, the offense picks up. And even then, the defense had a couple key stops, a couple key, turnover type situations, sacks. I think there's only 2 in the whole game, but they both feel like they came at pretty opportune times. And one thing I do want to say, I don't know if we touched on this quite directly, but early goes on 4th down. I think that, the math kind of, for the most part, I would say probably aligns with those being goes, but, it gives UNC a short field. So you kind of got to take all of that in context in terms of, hey, yeah, like UNC was out to a couple score lead early, but that was Brent and Buster being aggressive. That was them saying, hey, we have the confidence our defense can stop them if we don't get it there. But this situation warrants us, at the end of the game, it's a way, the game is about maximizing your possessions and taking advantage of the very limited times you'll get the ball throughout it. So they said, hey, we're not turning this ball over for free. So, sorry, a little bit rambly of an answer. I wouldn't necessarily say this is like proof of conference, Tech's now a wagon, let's go. But I'm certainly more confident. And honestly, I think my biggest takeaway is it just felt good that it was fun. That was a fun football game. I feel like the students perspective I've been thinking about, almost anyone who is an active undergrad right now has not seen Georgia Tech go to a bowl game in their tenure at Georgia Tech. I think that that's an important thing to consider when you're going, hey, what's the vibe? What's the thing? There was a very loud and very into the game contingent of students that stayed. I mean, obviously all the way to the very end because he's exciting all the way through. But, that's the feel good to feel good. That's something that, affects more than just like obviously home field advantage and stuff like that. But it gets students more likely to come back to games. It gets fans like us more likely to be like, hey, I'm going to buy season tickets, or I'm going to be at more games, or I'm going to go to the road game, or I'm going to watch on TV, or buy Section 103 shirts, or, all that, all those trickle down type things, the things that make you more connected to, oh, there's a need in my degree program is trying to get volunteers or money or resources for something. That's something that has kind of a halo effect. And I don't know, maybe I'm overstating the front porch thing, but I don't think that they're unrelated.
No, I actually that was one of my prevailing thoughts that whole time. And it's like you said, these students have seen so much bad football in the last 4 years, right? Like, I mean, when I started, I was fortunate in that they won 9 games my freshman year, 11 games my sophomore year. Like I got started with something good, and it set that expectation that, okay, this team might actually achieve some things. We have reason to expect that. If you started in 2019 or later, what reason have you had to expect that over these last few years? So
or even 18.
Exactly. Yeah. So finally getting to just see something like this and see like some of the pieces come together, like I'm just happy for them that they're getting to experience this, because it's been a long road for a lot of those kids coming through. And yeah, you just hope there will be more ahead, but just even getting to experience this is just, it's been a long time coming for them, I think.
So taking, I guess, dropping back a little bit to the point about the bowl game. It is the last Tech bowl game was in 2018. That was the Quick Lane Bowl versus Minnesota. It has been, like you said, it's been 5 years. Tech has to win 2 out of its next 4 games in order to make a bowl game. And the schedule is, if I remembered to pull it up as
I
I
think I've got it.
continue.
It's Virginia, Clemson, Syracuse, Georgia are the next 4.
Yep.
Okay,
Next
so
two on the list.
if you want to toss the last game of the season, which I think all of us are willing to do at a certain level, can Tech win 2? Can Tech win 2 of those 3 winnable games?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the year where we thought we didn't really know what the floor was. We didn't really know what the ceiling was either. And so we all kind of collectively landed on 6-6, and we keep arriving to we now arrived at 3-3 and 4-4 in ways we're like, how did we get here? This isn't the 3-3 and the 4-4 that we thought we were going to get. It is going all the way down, all the way up at any given point. Which is why I have no clue what the hell's going to happen next week. Like, I should we win? I think that's fair if this offense can play like this, and at least score 35. Like, I feel like I'm okay with thinking if we can score 35, we can win the game. Clemson even more so maybe, because that team just seems like it's just getting worse and worse by the week now at this point. And then and I think our friends now are going to be, if we win one of those games against Clemson or Virginia, I think we show up. I really think we show up well against Syracuse, just in terms of sheer people. Like, he was like, get your butts in these seats, guys. Like, that makes a real difference here. Attendance was like barely more than it was against Boston College, but like a few hundred folks. Still in the 35,000 mark. So
there were a lot more people tailgating, hanging around.
Yes, there was that. Tailgate scene
too.
was fantastic. Tailgate scene was fantastic yesterday. We all got to hang out together for the first time in a long time as a blog. Yeah, I'm gonna go with. It's harder to say no than it is to say yes right now. Surely because the offense is clicking. If the offense can click like this, that can win you a lot of things in college football right now, especially against bad teams. If it's this close against North Carolina, one would think if things are going logically, you should do better against Virginia. But none of this is logical so far. Like, I think we need to. I still think we need to expect the unexpected, and probably it'll be something even more unexpected that happens that we don't even think about.
Where I keep coming back to is I enjoy how exciting it's been, even if I feel like we have the most whiplash-inducing commentary of our podcast the last 4 weeks as we've had in any 4-week stretch in the entire time that we've been doing this. Going from, oh my gosh, this is crazy, this is a miracle, oh my gosh, this is horrible, what's going on, oh my gosh, this was fun. I haven't used the word fun in so long. If you would have told me, and we use this after, I think, the Miami game, if you would have told me halfway through the season we'd be 3-3, I would have been okay with it. If you'd have told me halfway in we'd be 4-4, honestly, I'd probably be okay with it. And I'm trying to, I don't know. I feel like I've spent the entire last month going like, okay, like we did blank, and now we've got Bowling Green. We did blank, now we've got Boston College. 1 week at a time, I guess. But I think there's a lot of good things going towards the rest of the year, and I think the other addendum, not just students, but hopefully, recruits, donors, fans, the people who are going to be the future of the team, be it in their support or their actual, people involved with the team, see that. And, whether that's the transfer recruiting, high school recruiting, or even good staffers and things like that, saw that and said, hey, I want to be a part of it. And right now I'm very much at the point of like, hey, I'm looking forward to next Saturday, tuning in on TV. Personal life's been crazy for the last couple of months, so I can't drive up to Charlottesville, but I'm looking forward to, putting it on the TV, maybe going somewhere, things like that. Things that are, it's already Sunday and it's on the brain. And I think that's a good feeling to have. A fair way to answer the question, or did I dance around it too
No, no,
much?
no. Well, I mean, you did your usual dancing around, but I think it's appropriate,
Yeah.
right? I think the situation with this, and I'm sure Nishant is going to say something similar. The situation with this team is just that it's so volatile. You don't really know how they're going to come out every single week, that it's just hard to say with any sort of confidence, can they go 2-1 in the next 3 weeks? Like it's just impossible, because either you don't know which of the two games that they would win, or you don't know which could be a mind-blowingly stupid loss. Like
Yep.
it's just honestly, it's tiring just to think about the possibility.
I just saw the
Go for
line
it.
for this game. Have you all seen the line yet?
Nope.
UVA by
We're-
2 at
Yep,
home.
UVA by 2.
So basically a toss-up.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a neutral field toss-up. I was telling someone this. It feels to me like that line is built to get action on Tech. Just after coming off of yesterday, and like people who decide to do some emotional betting.
That line becoming Tech by 1 would not surprise me by the end of the week.
But I think spiritually, given what this team looks like going, I mean, like a push on a neutral field does not feel wrong to me. And I have some stats to talk about UVA in a bit, but I definitely want to make sure that we get Nishant's take on what the next 3 weeks and the bowl game chances for Tech will look like.
Yeah, I'm probably going to ramble a little through my thoughts here as well, because there are actual like meaningful football thoughts and there are voodoo related thoughts about this one. So I'll start with voodoo. We're playing at Charlottesville. I know what happens when we play at Charlottesville over the last 20 years. So that kind of makes me not really too confident. And beyond that, I don't think there's anything similar for Clemson or Syracuse, but those are both teams that are similarly in weird places right now, where they have shown to be really good at times, and they've shown to be really, really bad at times. So there's just a lot of volatility, which kind of saps me from being confident. I guess in actual football terms, I'm just thinking of what I've seen from this team, and like just focusing on last night, we saw the best of what this team can be, right? The Haynes King, with the exception of one really bad throw, played probably his best game of the season. And like after I think some first quarter struggles, he was mostly dialed in. Again, other than the one bad pick, but you saw what the run game can do when the offensive line is just able to pave some lanes. Dante and Jamal are both really good at cutting to find a few extra yards. Jamal, for being 170 pounds soaking wet, is really good at just knocking the pile backwards. So the ground game is surprisingly effective, and I think we saw what can happen as the game wears on, as defenses get tired. That all bodes really well for the offense. I think where my concerns is on the other side. Like there's something to be said for you're going up against Drake May, Tez Walker, all the weapons they have. You're going to give up points in there. It's like you don't have the athletes to necessarily stop them the whole game. But some of what we saw, especially in the first quarter, they were just getting out athleted. The defensive line was not able to really get any push, and they were getting knocked backward for big gains on the ground. That's not the first time we've seen that this year against teams with much less talent than UNC. And so, I worry about that happening against, the next 3 weeks, against the next three teams. Clemson in particular still has some guys who can, move around even if they haven't been executing. Virginia and Syracuse, not so much, but we've seen this sort of thing happen even against Bowling Green. So, that's a long rambling way to say I have no idea what to expect these next 3 weeks. I know there are 2 wins in there. I see 3-0 happening. I also see 0-3 happening, and I don't think either would surprise me at this stage.
Right. Yeah.
The whole set of outcomes is possible. It's an entirely unknown concept. It's just that, again, the team is just so volatile that it's honestly going to be bizarre. That being said, Saturday, November 4th, Tech will play at UVA. UVA, right as of right now, is a 2-point home favorite. That game is at 2 p.m. Eastern on the CW, which, yay, another CW game. I wanted to get a little more insight into what UVA looked like just to sort of prepare everyone else for what to expect. Um, so I pulled up the UVA game page or the UVA team page on Game on Paper. If I remember correctly, I think they're still starting Anthony Calandria or Tony Calandria at quarterback. He is plus 1.4 in terms of EPA per dropback. As a team, they are plus 0.07, which is right around 51st in the nation this year. They are dreadful at running the ball. They are bottom 15 in the nation. They are minus 0.09, 116th EPA per play in the nation. Take that in aggregate in terms of their offense. They are very like they're in that third quartile, right? They're 85th in the nation, minus 0.02 EPA per play. And in terms of EPA per game, they're minus one, just right around minus one. So keep all of that in mind. Defensively, they really struggle against the run. They are bottom 10 in all of the metrics that we have on offer. And against the pass, they're very average. All of their ranks are right around 60. So that makes for a very obviously they're 2-6. So some of these things are expected, especially against the run. They've obviously had to defend the run more because teams have been winning against them more. And you typically run more when you are winning as a football team. So you have to keep some of those in mind as well. But there is especially with the ability to run that Tech demonstrated today, I think there is some push that can be had in that department. And it just comes down to Tech being able to limit what Calandria and what Kobe Pace and Paris Jones can do on in the run game as well. So I think those are a couple of things to look forward to. Obviously, that's not the entire. That's just a very short preview. You can look up the Virginia team page on Game on Paper. But I think that's all we really have to discuss on Georgia Tech football. Mr. Grant, would you like to tell us about Section 103 and what they have going on for Georgia Tech football fans as a result of last night's victory?
I mean, I've already plugged them a couple times here, so I won't try and recycle too much of that. But I mean, if this goes up before the end of the day today, they're currently running a 17% off sale. So go check that out. But as is fun tradition, periodically there are new releases on the site, and this week is no different. For those of us who know who perhaps one of the single greatest athletes ever to grace Georgia Tech football we know Joe Hamilton quite well. Including as currently one of the voices of Tech. And now there's a Joe Hamilton jersey, which, again, astonished that that's not something you could already buy somewhere else. So congrats on Section 103 for making it happen here, because that is, time-specific fonts, logo usage, and things like that really line up well when contrasted to the modern Smith Haynes King and the other jerseys, Zach Pyron jerseys that they've made in recent months as well. So go take a look. Joe Hamilton shirt out, 17% off today. And as always, they just keep releasing stuff. I know the four of us are always kind of on the prowl for another order. And Section 103, section103.com, and that's Section 103 on Twitter as well.
Let's talk about cross country next. They were at the ACC championships this past week. The women finished 9th. The men finished 10th. Mr. Grant, you usually have something a little bit more interesting to tell me than just basically the results on the championships. How do we contextualize this in the history of the program?
Yeah, absolutely. So Georgia Tech women's cross country in particular had a pretty strong showing, I would say, into like the COVID years, peaking at second in the ACCs. I actually was going before to find that year. I think it wound up being fall 2020. But I was amused because I started with looking at fall 2019, and the women actually got 10th and the men 9th in 2019. So I think that's an interesting place to start, given that our kind of yeah, it was 2020 that the women got second, but our kind of like traditional spot in the conference position is kind of that like 8th to 11th type zone. Like I said, a little bit higher in 2020. But that was kind of an interesting confluence of a lot of different factors. So I don't know, not to say that 9th to 10th is as expected. The ACC is a fairly deep conference, I would say, in cross country. We've talked about some of the significance of just the good showing we've seen at some of these other larger invitationals. But 9th and 10th, it's not really anything to write home about, I would say, but certainly nothing. I don't know. The floor has not fallen out by any means. It's pretty much right where they slot in these years that they haven't had, the greatest cross country runner in the history of Georgia Tech cross country running for their team. So yeah, nothing too crazy this week.
They will be next at NCAA South Region Championships on Friday, November 10th. And then the next weekend, they'll be at NCAA Championships. Is that still in Oregon? I guess that wouldn't be in Oregon this year because it's cross country. Not
they're first up at South Region Champs in Gainesville. That's the 10th, as you said. Track is more of the traditional Oregon, giant stadium dealio that they've got. It's actually Charlottesville that's hosting NCAA championships because they're looking more for the course than the track and the facilities and long jump. Yeah.
Right. Let's go over to golf. Mr. Purdy, Tech is doing something really weird this week where they're splitting the squad. Half of the squad, and I think the more senior part of the squad is staying at home for the Eastlake Cup, which is actually at Atlanta Athletic Club while there are renovations at Eastlake over the next year. That's from Monday through Wednesday. This will be televised on the Golf Channel from 3 to 6 p.m. The field, to set the stage for you, all of the NCAA semifinalists, on both the men's and women's side. So that is Florida, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and North Carolina on the men's side, and Wake Forest, USC, Stanford, and Texas A&M on the women's side. I have the lineup for you listed right there. Talk to me about what to expect from this half of the competition week for Tech Golf.
It's very top heavy because you got Bartley Forrester, you got Crystal Lamprecht, and you got Hiroshi Tai, who have all done everything from have some bad days to just blowing away the competition individually in various parts. So like this is the A team without a doubt right now. And Crystal Lamprecht, I want to say is still the number one ranked player in college right now in the PGA Tour University rankings. He may be second now. I could be slipping in there. But either way, yeah. No, this is. I mean, when you have Tech, Florida State, North Carolina all there, like you play the best guys. That's what they're here for. This is the last big. This is their last event this fall as well. So this is kind of their last hurrah before it gets cold. And they're gonna play at a really really nice course too. So but yeah, that's gonna be televised, and it's gonna be a really. I mean, all these teams are effectively the same talent level, if not degrees of variance. So it's like I don't think this is terribly predictive of what NCAA championships might look like down the road, or ACC championships in the case of UNC and Florida State. But at the very least, it's a great chance to see the best of college golf on television right now, and the future of various tours around the world. Whether some of these guys go to Europe, I am sure that Crystal Lamprecht is going to be on some President's Cup teams, and hopefully play in the PGA Tour and be a force there. So, the same for Bartley and Hiroshi. So it's going to be great. Carson Kim and Cale Fontenot are the freshmen that have made this squad too. So that's really good to see that some freshmen are at least going to play with the A guys. Will they be the stroke leaders? Who knows? But that's good to see. And then the other half of the team is going to go to Monterey, California to play in the Cypress Point Classic, which is just a 2-day event. So that's got us, Auburn, Arizona State, Illinois, Pepperdine, Stanford, Tennessee, and Texas. So it's still a loaded squad loaded teams out there too. We're just splitting ours in half compared to the rest of them. And those are just 2 days. Adam Bradden's playing that. Aiden Kramer's playing that. Andy Malice playing. Brady Rackley, Aiden Tran, and Colson Brown. So the newer guys are there. And then like the newer guys in the second tier of this team get sent out there. So, but they're all to play for Georgia Tech golf does not mean and get on the B team does not mean you're a bad golfer. That just means this team is so freaking good that we got to put them somewhere. So
I think it's good, right?
Yeah.
Jake, I think one of the things that we talked about a couple years ago, based on some comments from Bruce Hepler, is that he has to pick 6 guys for a tournament to score. And it's a hard job, especially if it's a hard job because the guys that don't make that tournament roster, they don't play. They have to go, they either stay at home, they practice. And in this week, everyone on the squad, more or less everyone on the team, is getting an opportunity to actually play and get tournament minutes.
More than everyone on the squad, because this is a note from the shot sheet too that I believe is via Ramblin' Rec's preview that they've got put together. But Colson Brown, non-scholarship football player who played high school golf, is added to the roster as a golf player because rounding out due to red shirts and whatnot on the actual like makeup of the roster. If you look at it, there's 11 guys on the roster, but Ben Ritter is redshirting. So literally they went out and found another guy to supplement the team, that's a pretty cool story. If I do say so myself. Yeah, I mean, I think this will be an interesting interesting opportunity. Like we said, not all these guys get to play every week, and the fact that they get to be out at the golf club of Georgia Collegiate and Cypress Point back-to-back weeks out means good minutes for them. And that it's a very familiar set at the East Lake Cup, being the other 3 Final Four teams from last year's or this past June's NCAA championships. But as Jack noted, it's very different makeup of the lineup. So certainly a lot to follow there. And also 10:55 and 11 a.m. at Atlanta Athletic over the next 3 days will be on Golf Channel. So you can also catch them live. So a lot of through lines to like here. I think kind of wrapping it up, there's going to be a lot of golf in action. You actually get to watch it live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's a pretty big thing. But really going to be interesting to see how they match up, whether it's the B squad out in California or the new look top bunch over in East Lake.
God, it's like watching U.S. soccer over a couple summers ago, where they split the A squad into playing a bunch of tournaments and then let them rest for the back half of the summer and played a B squad at the Gold Cup. It's a wild. I mean, again, it's really good for development, especially because that B squad is going to play match play for 2 days, which is something that we've seen Tech emphasize in its scheduling a little bit more over the last couple of years. They play a lot more match play these days, and sending these guys to get 2 days of match play experience is going to really help come the end of the season, where you're talking about, who are the guys that you want to have in your ACC championship lineup, in your NCAA regional lineup, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a format that doesn't, that seems inherently obvious to do in golf. Like all of us, when we play recreationally, like there's some element of match play stuff kind of happening, but when you get to the higher levels, it's a lot of just stroke play. And then suddenly in the NCAAs, you got it comes down to match play at the most crucial times. So yeah, getting every rep they can. I think we mentioned this when we read the when the schedule came out. We're like, wait a second, this is a lot of match play. This is clearly planned out. So it's good to see. I mean, win or lose, just the fact that they're exercising. I mean, this plays into Ryder Cup stuff and President's Cup stuff and everything, and how they make those lineups. It's just, all right, who's actually done this and done it well? Because it is a different kind of golf that you're playing in that context. So,
yeah, I think the match play stuff really translates well into TV. So if you're new to golf or really only got into it in the past couple opportunities to see them on TV, this will be another good time to get a really, and you got stroke play too, of course, but it makes for a really compelling TV watch, I would say.
Let's move over to the men's tennis. They were at the Black and Gold Invitational at Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee this past weekend. They're still in competition today, but we have 2 days of results that we can pour through. Mr. Grant, what do you have for me?
Yeah, I will say that as there tend to be in the fall, there is a lot going on with a lot of lot of different singles and doubles in actions in terms of day one. For the most part, Tech was matched up against Vandy folks, with the exception of Ron Sakdev, who played Ian Cruz out of BU. He did fall in 3 sets. Tech, otherwise, though, won 5 of their 6 Vandy-related singles match, if you will, on the first day, as well as the doubles. So kind of an interesting, I guess, not necessarily like traditional, team match format with the singles and the doubles, just given that there were 7 singles in actions and one was not a Vandy versus Georgia Tech. But if you scored this like a traditional match, Georgia Tech would have won, I believe, 6-1 in the traditional 7-point format for men's and women's tennis. So that was really good to see. In terms of day 2, kind of similar. There was actually, it was just straight up 7 singles against Middle Tennessee. So one more than usual there. In terms of that, not quite as exciting in Tech's favor, but a lot of good things to write home about against Vandy in the first day. I think is a safe way to put it.
Like I said, today is day 3 of competition, so we'll have those results for you next week. And then at the weekend, Tech will be at both the Tech men and the Tech women will be at ITA Fall Champs in San Diego. So we'll hopefully have some outcomes from that as well. So, final sport to cover for the day. Let's talk about volleyball. They had a week in which, if I remember correctly, we said they just had to take care of business and make it quick and easy, and they did not do that versus Boston College, but they did, however, get a 3-2 win at Chestnut Hill, and then they wrapped up the weekend with a quick and easy 3-0 versus Syracuse in Syracuse. One of the notes that I had from the BC game is something that I heard on the Cuse broadcast earlier today, actually. Boston College brought a lot of speed to the table, and that was something that apparently is really not something that SEC or ACC teams do, and it took Tech some time to adjust to that pace. Mr. Purdy, you had a couple of news and notes on this game. What did you think of this Boston College performance?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think a lot of what we emphasize in the ACC and what we emphasize is like when we watch volleyball, it's like, all right, who is hitting with the most power to just shut down a point immediately and just get it over with? And speed can play a part of that as well. And that if you could make a team's blockers have to be on their toes and just not know where you're going to be and have a very little time to make something with a little decision to minimize the decision making time they have to do. That helps out a lot. So we looked all right. I want to say Tamara Oates hit 24 kills against Boston College. She's now at 1,000 career total. She surpassed that during the match. Her 24 was the most she's had at Tech as well. She hit, I think, 27 at one point at Illinois State. So she's going to have to really have a career night to beat that. This was another game where Bella D'Amico played herself out of the game as well, which is very frustrating at this point because she played well enough last weekend at home to like kind of hold her spot there and looked like she was making that progress back. We had the game against North Carolina. I think I said was like felt like the most normal we've played in terms of like, nope, we just got a sweep done. Or I think maybe it was 3-1. Either way, like they looked like themselves as much as they can without Liv Mogridge. And that was just really nice to see. And then it just kind of backslid again with D'Amico, where she was just missing easy sets, just putting the ball half a foot behind where Bertolino needs it, or Otene needs it, where Mendez needed it. So going to 5 sets against Boston College was frustrating. Thankfully, we've won 4 of those instances so far. All of them have come since we lost Liv Mogers, though, which I've emphasized this. We can't emphasize it enough how not having her is problematic a lot. Because that's our blocking, that's our that's our other major offensive option. She's a vocal leader in there in huddle as well. And when you're losing her and D'Amico in that sense, that's a lot of leadership and a lot of normalcy that's just not there. So you're continuously fluctuating and adjusting all the time.
Not good to go to 5 against Boston College. They won the game, though. I think that's my big takeaway from the weekend. Syracuse was they're not having a great year, though. I think we didn't really mention that until we started looking at this game coming in this week. But oh boy, 2-20. It's been a long year for them.
Yeah, they're not doing great. They're 311. They were 311th in Evolve and like 255 in RPI. So just even playing them was like not helpful to all of our general season metrics. Like it is. I wish we'd have to. Some teams have to play them twice too, which is kind of sad. In terms of just like resume boosting. So I do want to note Liz Patterson has like kind of she's just part of the rotation now. DeAndre Pierce does not serve. Patterson serves for Pierce, and it's been working so far these last couple of weekends. I'll note. I've enjoyed that. She's not the greatest when it comes to defense at all, but she's up there. I also want to note that Bianca Bertolino is at 49 aces, which is third most in the country, and she has the most aces % in the country. So we have the weaponiest weapon out there right now in terms of just single item that you can use at any one point. That said, she hasn't been using it that well the last, like she against Boston College, she just went back to a float serve because she had 5 errors. Like it was not working at all. And today Syracuse just got it back in play. There's nothing much there. Didn't really need it when it was all said and done. So at least we're winning these games. We mentioned we have to win these games. We had to win all these games, and we did. That was the crucial thing there. Today against Syracuse, Tamara Otene did land awkwardly on her left leg in the second set. And it was like her left knee had a little twinge. She looked fine though. Like they iced it. Like it didn't seem like she was like in pain or anything like that. But considering it was Syracuse,
she was like laughing and walking it off, and they were just like, okay, well, we're playing a team that's 2-19.
19, yeah.
So we can afford to.
They did not let her play at all the rest of that match. Zoe Winford, our 4th string setter, got a lot of play, and she just ended up playing defense. So that was good to see. Kelly Engelman got a lot of time. Smiley Manyang and Eloise Suarez played the entire third set, which is cool to see. Syracuse very surprised by them. Did a very poor job with stats, and that there weren't any during the match. So I don't know what anything was really, but I'm pretty sure Manyang had close to 10 kills, and Bertolino I think led the team in kills. So that was fine. And Mendez looked all right. Everyone looked all right. It was Syracuse. There was a couple instances where like we were kind of like feeling our way into a match or into a set, but things cleared up eventually. So I don't want to overcook that set at all. But now we're 19-3, and we have the hardest match of the season on Friday.
Yes, that is Friday, November 3rd at 7 p.m. at home versus Louisville. Mr. Purdy, what rank in the coaches poll is Louisville right now?
4.
Yeah. There's
a shot we get to 10. It seemed like everyone pretty much up and down the top 11 though was winning the matches they had to win. So I think we're stuck at 11, and it's not going to be a top 10 versus top 10 match, sadly. But yeah, this match effectively makes or breaks, I think, if we have any shot at winning the ACC. We're tied for 3rd right now. Florida State won, so they're still same with us. But like Louisville has only taken 1 chink in the armor, so they have to get a second. And I just do not have any confidence beyond us of anyone maybe potentially doing that. So, and we still have to go to Miami.
Yeah, it's going to take a game. It's going to take those first 2 sets that Tech played versus Pittsburgh, right? Exactly. It's going to take playing a really aggressive style of volleyball and winning on those margins winning by those close margins, because Louisville is in that same caliber of opponent, that same tier of opponent that Pitt is. And you have got to stop things from getting out of hand and stop getting out adjusted. I think in the middle of the game, I don't necessarily think that like your quality of opponent heading into a game like this makes that much of a difference. But if you do believe in that, these are not games in which Tech has had to. I mean, I guess they played 5 sets versus Boston College. I shouldn't necessarily be particularly closed off to that, but on paper, like these are not games that Tech has to adjust to immense tactical shifts or counter adjust to adjustments that other teams have made in order to win. This is like, okay, you play your game, you will probably end up winning the game. These teams are responding to you rather than you responding to them, right? In Boston College and Syracuse. So again, Tech is now again that unfamiliar position of having the other role, and that they have to adjust to an opponent, and also adjust again, counter adjust, and that sort of thing. So
Right.
They are going to have to come out firing. They're going to have to I honestly think they're going to have to take those first two sets and really push in that third set to just get it done.
Worst case
if they
scenario.
do.
Yeah. Looking at the November
implication there being that they sweep Louisville. That's bold.
Ooh.
Well, if they're aggressive in the first two, I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to sweep them by a particularly dominant margin in that reality.
Oh yeah, that
right?
feels like a 25-23 kind of set.
Like they would,
cases.
yeah.
Yeah.
They would probably go to extra volleyball in all three cases, right? But they have to come out aggressive. Like in terms of the set results, they have to come out aggressive and win early. Is my takeaway.
I want to note the month of November for us. We host number 4 Louisville, and then this coming Sunday, a week from now, we have Notre Dame here. Then the next Friday we go to Pitt, so number 7-8 Pitt, and then we don't play that Sunday. We have a week off before we go to Miami, and then we host Syracuse, and then the day before Thanksgiving we play at Louisville. If you want to be a super super pessimist, there's only 2 wins left on this schedule.
I think us playing Syracuse, I know that they're a team we handled pretty well today, is honestly no bueno for the RPI in a way that it might not be super ideal when we think about like tournament host strength of schedule type things, but I think that's a little overly pessimistic. Take care of business against the Notre Dame's, Miami's of the world. Take care of business against Syracuse.
Well, I mean,
Louisville and Pitt. It showed us Pitt for sure. We just got to get it across the line.
Notre Dame and Syracuse, yes. No, you get those games. I'm very confident in. Half of these matches being Pitt and Louisville that's very possibly 3 losses, and then Miami didn't do well down there. They absolutely manhandled us earlier this season. It probably will be the same team without Mogridge by the time we play them there too. So that's the ultra pessimist version of me. I think we should beat them though. We are better than them. They're good, but we are better than them. So, we're gonna get. But if we're gonna win the ACC, we gotta win 5 or 6, probably. So
sounds right to me. You can't really. I mean, you got to be really aggressive against the teams above you. Is basically the
exactly.
end all be all to that one.
Exactly.
Well, especially when you don't already control your own destiny, I believe at that point. I mean, I haven't done the exact math with every scenario, but Tech being 10-2 in the conference with losses to Pitt and Louisville teams that are above them. Yeah, I guess, you win against each one, but you got to win each one, right?
Right.
You don't really have a lot of margin for error. I guess there's 2 games against Louisville, so that would be outright. It's tough, it's tough.
Absolutely. I think that about wraps it up for volleyball talk. So let's start wrapping things up for today. I think we're already at like an hour and 30 minutes in terms of record time. So, we had a lot of football to get through. Some news and notes from elsewhere around the flats. Baseball had another exhibition this weekend. That was versus UAB at the same time as Mini 500. I did not see a result or anything from that. Maybe I saw like a 7-4 win on Instagram, but I don't remember exactly. Danny Hall was also named an honorary Georgia Tech alumnus, so congrats to him. Basketball is going to be in season starting this week. At the end of the week, women's basketball has their home opener versus what is only labeled as Georgia College. And I was not aware that
this is the
GCSU.
This is Milledgeville. This is the exhibition match. Both them and the men have exhibitions. The official start is next Monday at 11 a.m. against Coastal Carolina.
Do we talk about that?
I wonder if they're trying to do we're doing 24 hours of games or something.
Something funky.
I haven't looked at the schedule though.
My thought was going to be maybe you got APS, some of the private schools, some of the Fulton or DeKalb or something like that, district wide, field trip day or something, but still very, very odd. I will note that the men are playing Clark Atlanta, which between that and GCSU, those are interesting local games, but again, they're exhibitions. So weird start to the year. Clark and GCSU being intriguing exhibitions, but other than that, I mean, we're kind of we're going full throttle into these winter sports, and things are really starting to spool up. So
Yeah. So that women's basketball game is Thursday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. And then the men's basketball exhibition versus Clark Atlanta. That's Wednesday, November 1st at 7:30 p.m. Both games obviously at McCamish Pavilion. Excuse me. And final news and note that I have: club hockey went 1-1 versus Tennessee this past weekend. I had the scores in front of me, and now they have disappeared.
I think they won 4-1 and then lost 7-4, something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. But a good weekend for them, and I think they're right around the end of their season too,
Yep,
right?
they are.
Talking about tournament time, so we'll have an update on that. Hopefully next week we'll do a little bit more digging. Gentlemen, it's time for the ACC tasting menu. We're going to start this week on Thursday, November 2nd at 7:30 on ESPN. Wake Forest plays Duke in another clash of the Research Triangle variety. Mr. Purdy, who do you have for me?
Both Duke and North Carolina left the rankings, which means the state of North Carolina is out of the college football rankings, but I'm still taking Duke in this case.
Duke is favored by 11.5 in this game, by the way. Friday, November 3rd at 7:30 on ESPN2, Boston College visits Syracuse. Syracuse is a 3.5-point favorite, Mr. Grant.
Dare we say that Boston College has some of the dreaded proof of concept type action going for them? I think they've kind of acquitted themselves well after starting with a season opening loss to NIU. They're 5 2 cents. So give me Boston College. I think that might be an interesting one to watch for a Friday night slate game.
Nooner on ABC. Notre Dame attempts to make Clemson 4-5. Notre Dame is a 3-point away favorite. Nishant, what do you have for me?
Hey, you remember when this was the ACC title game a few years ago in the season that made no sense?
Oh my God, right.
The rematch game there that year too, right?
Yeah, they played twice.
It was.
And Clemson won the one that mattered more. Anyway, yeah, those were a couple fun games. I suspect this will be less fun. I think Notre Dame handles it.
Sam Hartman might wipe the floor with this Clemson team, which will be cathartic in many ways.
I am surprised the spread is as small as you said. Like, I would comfortably take Notre Dame in this one, but I have been known to be wrong.
I've got a question. Looking ahead, do you think a Clemson in the world where they lose this game, potentially moving them then to 4-5, that has to have some sort of interesting implication for the Tech Clemson game the week after, right? Like that, I can't be the only one thinking that.
Look, I believe in taking these things 1 week at a time.
Don't quote what I said back to me. Don't quote what I said back to me.
Sean, go ahead.
I was just not saying thanks, Coach, but if we were playing them in game number 11, I would be kind of smiling as I look at that. But I am thinking about it. Jake.
We are monitoring the situation, if you will. We have our flight trackers on. Moving forward to a nooner on ACC Network, Campbell will play newly minted, not ranked North Carolina. There's no spread on this one because it's Campbell versus North Carolina. Mr. Purdy?
Campbell baseball might put up a fight against North Carolina baseball, but that's about it there. So, yeah, I do not think the team from Lillington will do anything against the Tar Heels.
3:30 on ESPN. Florida State visits Pittsburgh. Florida State is favored by 22.5. Mr. Grant?
Yeah, that's not particularly close. Florida State, send it.
If there is bad weather in Pittsburgh, like there was today for Jags Steelers, I wonder what happens there. It could turn into a rock fight, but that's my personal opinion. 3:30 p.m. on the ACC Network. This is looking like a battle for the 2 seed in the ACC championship game. Nishant, Virginia Tech visits number 15 Louisville. Louisville favored by 10.5 points.
My pick has to be Louisville in this one, especially after what they did this past week, shutting out Duke. But, one of these teams is a Coastal Division alumnus. I did not expect this to be a fun game to watch like a month ago, but it actually might be.
The chaos is in the walls at this point.
Yeah.
Mr. Purdy, you have the last game on our schedule, 8 p.m. ACC Network, Miami versus NC State. Miami is a 4-point road favorite at Carter Finley Stadium. What say ye?
Let's remember, too, collectively that we don't know who we're playing in football next year or the 7 years after that, but we're going to find out tomorrow night. That's going to be a very fun time to see how and why we're playing Stanford probably 3 times at Stanford in 5 years or something crazy like that, even though that's not what they said is going to happen. My actual pick for this game is Miami. The NC State not great. They not great. So, and Miami
Next style bowl champs though, they'll take that to their graves.
That they will. So, yeah, we'll see. This will be a fun exercise for us to do next year when we have to figure out why the stadium at Cal is going to crack under pressure of the tectonic plates during our game or something like that.
That's a terrifying thought that I'm now going to have an existential crisis over off air. Sicko picks of the week time. In lieu of that, Mr. Grant, what do you have first off the dome for me?
Yeah, I've got an interesting one this week. I try not to pick anything involving a ranked team. I try not to pick anything that I've repeated from earlier in the season. That said, I'm circling around to Louisiana Monroe, who's 2-6, at Southern Miss, who's 1-7. I don't think Southern Miss has really worked out the way they thought it would, and this seems to be, if anything, certainly, to borrow a phrase, rock fighty type game down there in the Deep South. So that's what I got.
Mr. Purdy.
This is not exactly sicko as much as just this isn't an AAC game. This is not a Big East game. This is not any other conference game. This is a Big 12 game, and that is the Cincinnati Bearcats at UCF Golden Knights. It makes me laugh that this is a matchup that will happen every year, and here we are. It has to happen, and so it's happening. Couldn't care less who wins that game.
It's kind of disgusting. As is, I believe, Nishant's pick for Sicko pick of the week.
Right. So somehow Nebraska has 5 wins. I don't know how that is possible at this point, but they do. Anyway, they're playing Michigan State. That sounds about as unappetizing as it gets, except for one game, which I think you're about to bring up next.
Oh, buddy. Yes. But before we get there, do you think if Nebraska wins this game to make a bowl for the first time in many, many moons, do they celebrate Scott Frost Day again?
I mean, it's always Scott Frost Day, though.
It is
We
always
celebrated
Scott
it yesterday.
Frost. It is always Scott Frost Day. Happy Scott Frost Day, everyone. But let's talk instead about another very terrible, terrible football criminal in Kirk Ferentz and his son Brian. Iowa goes to Northwestern next weekend at 2:30 on Peacock. This one is actually at Wrigley. So if you liked a lot of the bad baseball that was played at Wrigley this year, well, you're going to get more bad football.
There might be a baseball score in this game.
That is true because Iowa's favored by 6 points and the over-under is 30.5. I have never seen an over-under this low.
Give me
Bravesy boys. How are we going to talk bad baseball? The World Series going on right now. Neither of us are in it.
Go down.
Neither of us are in it.
Go down.
Neither of us are in it.
Please continue to eat at Arby's, Mr. Grant. Please continue to eat at Arby's. But yes, Iowa Northwestern. The quest to, 235 for Brian Ferentz to keep his job is still alive.
325.
There's 325.
325.
Make it to 235 at this rate.
Right.
God, they are so bad. They are so bad. But yeah, that is going to be a terrible, terrible football game at Wrigley Field. I think that about wraps it up for us today. No trivia. We're almost at 2 hours of recording, so we'll take care of that next week. Mr. Grant, wrap us up.
Yes, thanks as always for tuning in. We know this is a long one. There was a lot to talk about, and somehow we probably still could have gone another 2 hours if we really were into it. That said, you can always find us from the rumbleseat.com. We post these podcasts there, but also the other great content that the site produces. You can email us with any comments, questions, suggestions at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at FTRS blog. I am at Jake Grant. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 there as well. At Section 103, section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at From the Rumble Seat, and these podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Nishant, thanks for coming on. And as always, listeners, tell your friends, give us a like, a comment, not comment. This isn't YouTube, but you can comment on the website. We take that too. But best way to spread this kind of stuff around is for word of mouth. But as always, let us know what you want to hear from us as well. In the meantime, we'll talk to you next week. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.